Long story short, a game can be given a pass for nuisances, bugs, bad design, and really any other aspect that invokes negative emotions and perception. As long as the game is good enough to overcome those flaws, they'll be overlooked. Obviously, there are some games that are so bad that they won't even launch, they don't work at all, or they're literal scams. We aren't really including that in the discussion. We're talking about games with some legitimacy. There are plenty of games that you can look back on fondly, and you don't even think about the bugs that they had. But I'd be willing to bet that even in your top 10 games, we can go back and find bugs or bad game design in all of them. There are three types of major downsides. There are reasonable ones, frustrating ones, and unacceptable ones. Reasonable downsides are likely things we're all familiar with. They're almost in every game. They're usually interactions that have no noticeable or repeated impact on your gameplay. This includes things like funny deaths, such as in Skyrim when you get launched into the air by the giants. Is it silly? Sure. Can it break your immersion? Possibly. But it's only against one enemy type, so it's not like it happens all the time. And it only happens when you die, which makes you able to just laugh at it and move on. It doesn't really impact the game. Surprisingly, one element to this category is that there's a shift based on the average state of games at the time. Something that we might have deemed reasonable at one point can easily become unacceptable later. Things like save points might seem unreasonable now, but back in the day, that was the only way that you could play. I mean, for God's sake, Resident Evil had a consumable item that you had to use in order to save the game. Just think about that. It was rough at the time, but now that would be seen as completely unacceptable. Frustrating downsides are things that repeatedly occur, they can clash with the gameplay loop, or maybe it's just story elements that feel unresolved or unfulfilling. They're not enough for you to stop playing the game, but they still get in your way. I've recently been playing Horizon Forbidden West, and it's in this category for me right now. The controls are really clunky, there's no auto sprint on keyboard, and I'm often clicking on things when I don't mean to. Sometimes I get absolutely tackled by too many enemies at once, but when everything works, the gameplay is incredible, and the game looks phenomenal, so it just wipes away all the earlier sins that I talked about. Rogue Trader is another game that would fit into this category. This game has some excellent gameplay, but you're completely overwhelmed by the amount of maintenance you need to do for level ups and talents with your team. You have a retinue that's literally 10 people large, and every time you level up, you gotta level your whole team up, and there is so much to read through in this game. Every single little effect is just a page of text trying to sit here and decipher about what each ability does and how you can combine them together. It's fun and cool, but it is some definite fatigue when you're playing a game. And on top of that, the story really fizzles out at the end. So even though I liked it in the beginning, towards the end, I did not like it at all. These things are major downsides that are very frustrating, but they can be overlooked. The main thing with these types of downsides, though, is if they happen too early in the game, it may not give players long enough time to get to the redeeming elements. Final Fantasy XIV is a really good example of that type of problem. It is probably 60 to 100 hours before you get deep enough into the game to where you feel like you've gotten to the meat and potatoes, the good part of the game. But if you don't push through that 60 to 100 hours, you are not going to get to the fun part. And that is just a huge investment for too many people, and I don't blame anybody who can't look past that. So even though this still fits into that kind of frustrating downside, the point is they've kind of piled up all the frustration at the beginning of the game, which is really not how you want it. You got to kind of sprinkle it through the game so that people can get to the good part and kind of overlook the problems. Now, unacceptable downsides are things like game-breaking bugs, right? You know, you turn on the game, your save doesn't load. You're halfway through the game, the save doesn't load, or you can't leave an area, the save's busted. Something like that, there's no way you're going to go back and restart this game. It's just so frustrating, it's completely unacceptable. Antagonistic game design. Stuff like them making mechanics that just waste your time. Enemies are able to circumvent some of your abilities in a way that feels unfun. It's things like time-gated mechanics, practically anything that involves like MMO or gacha games. that is going to fit into like antagonistic game design, where the developers seem to be designing mechanics that are legitimately designed to get in your way of having fun. And the last bit of this would just be a horribly put together story. Cyberpunk 2077 definitely fits into this category, especially at its launch. It made absolutely no sense to play this game. When I played it, it was right at launch, might have even been, the couple day early access or whatever comes with it. This game had so many issues, it's documented everywhere. You could look up any video on this. The game ran extremely poorly, units were popping in and out, quests just weren't resolving, you had multiple NPCs talking on your screen at the same time, it was very difficult to figure out what was going on, the crafting in the game just didn't work, you needed higher level materials in order to craft a lower level item, and there was no way to change your outfit, so you looked freaking ridiculous the entire time you were playing the game. I still finished it, but I wasn't happy about it. And earlier we talked about reasonable games, including something like Skyrim. Well, the opposite of that is going to be Starfield. It was an immense disappointment. The story was terrible, and there was nothing exciting to do in the game. It felt super bare bones. The gunplay was weak, the abilities were terrible, the perks were all uninspired, and you had horrible inventory management problems. I mean, there was nothing more fun to me in Starfield than going through my unorganizable inventory to find 47 different pieces of food that I needed to eat in order to heal myself. Another problematic game that could fit into this category would be Back 4 Blood. This game had terrible matchmaking. Anytime that you joined a game, it was just a randomized queue. There was basically just quick play. You couldn't find a lobby or anything like that. So you quick play into a match, and often it prioritized games that were already in progress. So you would just pop into a game, and you would almost immediately start losing. I don't know if it was because there was a bit of a jarring period between swapping from a bot to you taking the place of the bot, however they wanted to cook it up. The problem was, you got into a match, you almost instantly lost. So you were just joining games and losing over and over and over again. There was nowhere to have any fun in this game. And finally, we come to the clip that's been running in the background this whole time, Valheim. Now, this is a survival game, but one of the problems it has is that you have extremely limited carry weight, and materials in this game are extremely heavy. So what ends up happening is you have to make an excessive amount of runs in order to return the materials you've gathered back to your base. This 40 minute long clip is me moving materials from one location back to my base. This doesn't include me mining the materials. This doesn't include me preparing the system of portal networks that I have to get me around the map, traversing it quicker. It doesn't include any of that setup. It is literally just the time it takes for me to grab the materials and get it back to the base. 40 minutes of that type of thing. This is just an unacceptable mechanic in a game. Now, 3 things can redeem all of the stuff we just discussed. Countering mechanics, a good soundtrack, and friends. Countering mechanics are anything that outright combats the problems that we've talked about. A good example is something like autosave. If you're playing a game that autosaves every few minutes, it doesn't really matter how poorly something goes or how bad a glitch or a bug is. If you could just reload a save and you only lose a few minutes of progress, it's not really a big deal. Autosave directly counters any sort of glitches or bugs that might happen in a game that don't permanently lock you out of progressing. If a game has respec, this also counters problems like talents that aren't properly balanced. If the game allows you to change your stuff around at will or through a cheap cost, then if you make a choice you don't like or you realize it wasn't described properly, there's some sort of translation error between what it says versus what it does, you could just respec and you've completely removed the problem. Respec is a counter mechanic. Another thing would be outfits. Like I talked about before with Cyberpunk, you could not swap what your character looked like. So my character looked absolutely ridiculous. If you have the ability to swap your outfit, commonly known as transmog, then it counters the problem of having bad-looking gear. A soundtrack can easily override some of the downsides of a game. Games like Mario and Zelda have iconic soundtracks. You would immediately recognize songs from those games. It's good music, it's recognizable music, but it doesn't really improve the game as much as it just solidifies its hold at that spot. That good music just fits in with the game rather than lifting it up. It always saddens me when a friend tells me that they mute the music of a game just to listen to their own playlist in the background. And I feel like it happens because they're used to this type of sustaining music that you would get in another game like Zelda or Mario. A good soundtrack will elevate the game to another level. The type of music you hear during combat that it would make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. Your heart rate goes up, you get goosebumps, you're going to feel inspired. Immersion washes over you. Some examples here would be Path of Exile, Expedition 33, Rogue Trader, There are some other honorable mentions, of course. Realistically, this could go on, but if you listen to some soundtracks from things like Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, you're definitely going to hear some excellent music. Any game can be good with friends. You can crack jokes, laugh at problems, even if there is a bug or glitch, everybody can just chuckle at it. You can talk about something completely irrelevant to the game while you use the game as something to just stay busy. Any game can be good with company, so the game's inner workings are completely irrelevant. Sandbox games easily match this category. Because seriously, who enjoys chopping wood for 12 hours straight? I'll tell you the answer, it's people who can talk to their friends the whole time. Valheim was that game for me. I hated it, but I was playing with my friends, so whatever, I was having fun. But there's something lurking in the dark here. You're saying, hang on. Earlier, you said Cyberpunk was in the unacceptable category, but you finished it. You're right, I did. And that's because there's an exception to all of these universal truths that we just discussed. A powerhouse that can completely tip the scales. An element so unfair that companies everywhere are working their magic and having their top scientists working day and night to perfect it. And that thing is hype. Hype can completely overwhelm any negative. It doesn't matter how bad a game is, hype will blind people from the truth and cause them to power through a game regardless of the problems. There's a reason they call it a hype train, and it's because this thing is not stopping easily, and the bigger the hype, the harder it is to stop. In the end, it doesn't matter if you're jumping through hoops as long as you're having fun doing it. Bad mechanics, bad story, bad bugs can get in the way of enjoying a game. But if a game is fun enough, it doesn't matter how many of those problems are in the game, because you will completely overlook them because of how much you enjoyed playing the game.